The Cleveland Browns are searching for their next head coach, and we're going to tell you the names that you need to know. There's a lot of names, and we're just going to go through 9 today. This is going to be a two-part episode. Make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, leave a comment, let us know who you'd like to see as the next Browns head coach. But Noah, I'm excited to go through some of these names because I don't know, it's a little exciting. Something new is always exciting.
It is exciting. You got people already tracking Jimmy Haslam's airplane, seeing where he's flying to in case he's meeting with an agent or whatnot. There was rumors he went to Jimmy Sexton, who is one of the main agents for a lot of coaches. Uh, Whereabouts, I believe that's in Tennessee. That happened over the weekend. So there's a lot going on. Of course, a lot of names that are interviewed have been interviewed already and are now coming up to be interviewed. So we're going to break down all of them. Literally every single one of them. We have all of them here for today and tomorrow's episode of At the Office. So some of the names that they've talked about already will be today, and then the further and further outlandish, I think we will continue to get into tomorrow. So make sure you stay tuned. Make sure you pay attention to this video, pay attention to the next one, because we have plenty of content coming in for this Browns coaching search that you need to hear.
And the way that we broke this down is by defensive coordinator, then offensive coordinator, and then finally head coaching with one outlier there.
Okay, you ready to get into it? You want to go DCs first?
Yeah, let's jump right in.
Let's get it.
All right. So first of all, what you see here, only really one thing to call out. When you see experience, that's head coach, or I'm sorry, that's NFL experience only. So I'm not counting college here, high school, etc. That is only NFL experience. So let's start with the man already in the building, one Jim Schwartz. I know that you're not too high on this pick.
Yeah, I like Jim Schwartz. I would like for him to stick around if whoever they hire to be our head coach decides that they want to keep him around. But to me, retreading these guys that were here on a regime that you just fired and you just moved on from is like trying to keep continuity and like fitting a square peg in a round hole to me. Like if we are moving on, we need to move on. Jim Schwartz has done an awesome job as our defensive coordinator. If he can come back in some capacity to that realm, according to our new head coach, I'm 110% here for it. But I just don't like the idea of shoehorning this guy in there to be our head coach when he wasn't the main voice last season anyway. You're talking about a guy that had a regular season record of 29-51. He did bring the Lions to the playoffs when he was there, but lost that game. You're talking about a Lions team that had Matt Stafford and Megatron on the same roster, and the offense couldn't get it going sometimes. There's just a lot of things that it's like, yes, I see it. Maybe he does deserve a second chance, but I don't know. We're deciding to move on and do new. So to me, I want to do new. Where are you at?
Well, first of all, I want to point out a typo immediately. He actually has 32 years of experience in the NFL, not 22. He's been around a really long time. He actually started his career in the NFL with the Cleveland Browns. I don't know if you knew that. He was a personnel scout for us way back in the early 90s. That said, the one thing that you said that really points out to me or stands out to me and that I agree on is that retreading people from this failure of a regime that we've been in at head coach just doesn't make a lot of sense. I think we've seen great leadership from Jim Schwartz. He is clearly one hell of a defensive coordinator. He is a Super Bowl winning coach. He coached that Eagles defense to a Super Bowl win, and they were notable for their defenses. I really want to hang on to him as our DC. That said, everything that you said, it just doesn't make sense for me at head coach. What we're trying to do is we're trying to change the culture. And I
Yep.
think his side of the ball has good culture, but you need somebody to come in and set that tone. That is extremely hard to do. It's like getting promoted at work. Is it possible? Sure. But it's extremely hard to go from intern to CEO and have people listen to you and respect you because they still know you as that intern. It's not quite the perfect example, but you get what I'm saying. So I'm with you here. I like Jim Schwartz and I hope he's still around, but not a head coach for me.
If we are to have a fallback option, I wouldn't mind Schwartz as like our fallback option. Say we shoot high for a Harbaugh or maybe another name that comes up later on in the searching, this entire head coaching search. There's a lot of different ways we could go about it. I wouldn't mind him being the fallback option if all else fails, but that said, I hope we don't have to get to a fallback option. He's not my least favorite pick by any means. He's probably one of my he's top 10 for me, top 5 maybe even, but
I was
you
gonna
don't
say
want top 5, you want number 1.
he's not 2nd or 3rd on my list either, so if he is the fallback option, something went clearly very wrong for the Cleveland Browns. Let's move on to an interesting name on this list, Aiden Dirty. And if I pronounce that name wrong, don't come after me. I'm going from Pro Football References pronunciation guide there. Dirty's interesting mainly in that he doesn't have a ton of NFL experience, just 11 years there, more than some. But he started his coaching experience in England. He is English. Interesting pick here. What do you think of Dirty?
I don't see much of an appeal here. I think if we're going young, new, fresh, we're going to go the offensive coordinator route. I think we're doing our due diligence on a lot of these names. Dirty's a part of a team that's in the playoffs right now. They got a bye. They were the number 1 seed. So it makes sense to go out and reach out for some of these guys. We'll talk about his counterpart on offense tomorrow over in Seattle. But to me, he doesn't really stick out in terms of a guy that's going to stick not just for our coaching opening, but any of the coaching openings right now. He'll be one to watch out for and be like, hey, I remember that name maybe 5, 6 years from now. But right now, he's still getting his footing. He's still, just getting into some of the NFL, the higher level experience. I believe this is his first year as defensive coordinator.
2nd.
It's his second. Okay. He's been through some of the lower ranks of NFL coaching before. And by lower ranks, I just mean positional coaching. So he's climbing the ranks. He's got some time. He's young for a coach. He's only 46. I don't think this is really going to end up being a strong candidate. It's just one of those due diligence types of moves to me. Where are you at with 30?
Yeah, I agree with you. It should be noted that he's been D coordinator quite a bit in his past, notably for 4 or 5 years as the D coordinator of the London Warriors. I know that's not the NFL, and obviously he's had to come into the NFL and work his way up. Started as an intern, went to assistant, went to linebackers coach, D line coach, and now he finds himself as the D coordinator for Seattle the last 2 years. I agree. This is an odd one, honestly. I'm not sure why they're interviewing him other than satisfying the Rooney Rule, and if that is the case, that's disappointing, honestly, because I think there are very good head. I think the Rooney Rule is a great rule for the record, but just checking a box by bringing in a guy like Dirty, and I'm not saying that's what we're doing, but based on experience and everyone else we're talking to, it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. So that's where I'm at on this one.
Yeah, like I said, he's not a strong candidate in my opinion. And you bring up the Rooney Rule, and that's fine. And maybe that is part of it because he does check the box of the Rooney Rule. But to me, there's a lot of posturing that goes on in these head coaching searches, especially in the NFL, of, doing some due diligence here because we want to start getting this name in the hopper of people that are potentially going to be head coaches one day. So this really could just be some league wide posturing as well for a guy that's going to eventually get a head coaching job. You normally don't get a head coaching job the first go around of being interviewed for head coaching. You know what I mean? It takes several attempts. That doesn't really happen in the NFL. So to me, it's more so of getting a guy's name in the hopper now because he's going to be a worthwhile candidate with some more experience, polish, and whatnot. And that's kind of what all of these owners do as head coaching vacancies open up. I mean, we're talking about potentially 20 plus names by the time these 2 videos are all said and done, Eric. There's a reason why there's so many names brought up because there's so many people that could fill these vacancies.
Yeah, and for the record, if Dirty was the one that expressed interest in the job through his agent or however that happens, obviously they're not filling out a job application. But if that is the case, then great. Absolutely think we should go through that process, even if we know he's not the guy. And I hope we're open and honest with him through that process. That listen, this probably isn't the fit right now, but we wanted to have that conversation. And have it in a way that's constructive, maybe down the road, like you're saying. I want to move on
100%.
though. Jesse Minter, another defensive coordinator for the Chargers. This is an interesting name. I'm just going to say no right off the bat because he's a cheater. But what do you think?
Yeah, no, I'm with you 100%. I'll let my Ohio State fandom show loud and proud right now. He was on that Michigan team with the sign stealing scandal, so I'm all the way good on it. He is a name that is rising through the ranks quickly because of what's going on with Harbaugh over with the Chargers. They are having a great culture being built over there despite their playoff loss this season already happening in the wild card round. He has a mix of really good background. He is a defensive mind that I think will get a coaching job at the NFL sooner rather than later, just because of his defensive success with all different types of tools, pieces, parts, and weapons. A lot of his experience comes from college. That doesn't, to me, disqualify him for being ready for the NFL. You can see guys jump back and forth and do well each way or other way. Sometimes you're horrible in college, sometimes you're great in the NFL. I think of a Cliff Kingsbury when I bring up that kind of name. um, so to me, I'm good on him. I don't like the baggage of the scandal, and I'm 100%. If I was the GM, I would take that into account, and maybe that's wrong on me, but that's where I'm at. But I agree with you.
Yeah, and let's also call a spade a spade. The Browns, frankly, do not need a defensive minded coach. Been there, done that, check those boxes, currently have a great defense in place. If you wanted that defensive minded coach as a head coach, then your option and correct pick would be Jim Schwartz. But that's not what this team needs. You mentioned the Chargers. They are a good playoff team, and yet they were held back by their offense. Not all of that's their fault. Obviously, they went into the offseason with the goal of protecting Justin Herbert, and that broke down through injury. So
Injury
not the
wise,
fault of
yeah.
anybody, but that defense looked really solid last night. I watched that game. I watch every playoff game. That defense looked good. The Patriots just had a little more on their side, and the ball was bouncing their way as well. So that's no knock to Jesse Minter. And I know I poke fun, called him a cheater. Yes, there's a sour taste anybody from that Michigan regime, especially since
Yeah.
they just avoided any punishment whatsoever. But I agree with you. I think he is up and coming, just not a right fit for the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, not right now. And I don't even mind taking a defensive guy on. It just depends on experience, where we're at, blase, blase, blah. And we bring up like Durde and Minter. I wonder if people are posturing towards the Browns that they're interested, specifically defensive minds, just because of how strong the defense is. So they'll be tethered to that more so than the offensive side of the ball that, as we know as fans and people listening at home, of course, it needs a lot of work.
Maybe, but I mean, it depends so much too. That doesn't necessarily mean that they follow the exact same scheme as Jim Schwartz. Jim is a guy that likes a really strong front, and he kind of uses different pieces in his backfield that can kind of fit in and aren't necessarily the stars of the show, so to speak. So somebody like Dirty coming in or Minter coming in, they might not subscribe to that same philosophy. So it might not work that way. But that said, I get what you're saying. Everything that we want in a head coach is that CEO of men, that leader of men. And unfortunately, at least for these last two, I don't think they're it. They don't have the requisite experience to be that for us.
Yeah, they're just not there yet, and that's okay. That's part of the process, the weeding out the amount of interviews we do. I want to keep it pushing though, Eric, over to the offensive coordinators. And I think it is to note too, a lot of these names that we're talking about in today's episode are people that have interviewed, are going to interview, or have been heavily rumored to interview.
That's right.
So let's just turn the page to Tommy Reese, Dan Pitcher, Todd Munkin. Let's dig in with Tommy Reese. Tommy Reese is, of course, the young offensive prodigy, came to Cleveland to learn underneath Kevin Stefanski. He is a name in both college football and professional football circles that is thought of very, very highly. He will be a head coach at some level someday, very soon. That said, to me, Eric, as highly regarded as Tommy Reese is, and how I do think he'll be one of those names like a Shanahan, like a McDaniel, for example, where we're like, oh, yeah, they were on our roster forever ago. He'll be one of those. It's just not time for him yet. He shouldn't be the head coach of the Cleveland Browns. He's 33 years of age. He's got very little experience in the NFL. He's only got 1 year as a coordinator, which was last year for the worst ranked offense in the NFL. So I'm good on Tommy Reese, but mad respect to him because I think he will be something great one day. One day.
Yeah, I like Tommy Reese, and I don't have too much to add, to be honest with you. Apart from the Browns, the only experience in the NFL he had came back in 2016 when he was an offensive assistant for the Chargers. That's not to say that exactly what you're saying, that he's not an up and coming guy. It's just it's not it. He's been O coordinator for years now, starting at Notre Dame and then 1 year in Alabama before he did come to the Browns. I like him a lot, but yeah, it's too early, especially for what the Browns need in particular. Maybe this wouldn't be too early for a really young offense somewhere in the NFL. Nothing is really coming to mind, but what the Browns need more than anything is stable leadership at the top. They need somebody to come in, set culture that's just not going to come from a young, inexperienced guy at this point. That's sad to say, but that's just the case for us.
No, it is 100%. Tommy will do great things one day. It was a pleasure to have you here in Cleveland, I guess. The offense wasn't super good under you. I don't think that is a microcosm of Tommy Reese, though. There's a lot going on there. It'll be curious to see what his next stop is, whether he goes back to college or whatnot. Nick Saban is his biggest fanboy. People call up Nick Saban, ask for his opinion on who they should bring in as a coach, and he says, call up my boy Tommy Reese. So it'll be exciting to see how his career continues to evolve, because I think he's going to be a name that we'll be talking about on other sidelines for years to come. Hopefully, other sidelines, meaning we got our head coaching hire right this cycle, not cycles down the line. Dan Pitcher, he's an interesting one. You want to take it, Eric?
Sure. So he is the Bengals offensive coordinator, current Bengals offensive coordinator. He's been with the Bengals for a very long time. He started in the NFL with the Colts for a couple years, but then moved over to the Bengals in 2016, and he's been there ever since. He's done a little bit of everything. He's been the offensive assistant. He's coached quarterbacks, and now OC, of course. It's an interesting one. Let me first say that he's been around for a long time in that he worked for Marvin Lewis, Chuck Pagano, and now Zach Taylor. I think that's interesting to note because he's one of those guys that's pretty well respected down there. But same issue, just not his time.
No, I don't think it's his time either. He isn't the play caller down in Cincinnati right now, so that's a knock against him. It is to note, you mentioned about his time being with the Colts, he was a scout. He actually overlapped scouting with one Andrew Barry, so that's where this connection is. They're probably a little bit of personal friends, if I'm going to be honest. So maybe this is another one of those posturing moves, doing Dan Pitcher a favor to start getting his name in that hopper. But I don't think he is another serious candidate, as I've come to learn, and thinking back to past head coaching searches for our Cleveland Browns, because trust me, there's been many, the first couple names that come off the board aren't typically the main names that we're really going for. We're just starting to get our feet wet. So we'll see what ends up happening. But to me, Dan Pitcher isn't a super strong candidate to get this job. I do think he has some fans here, one being Andrew Barry, his buddy back from the Colts. But we'll see. I'm not super high on him. The Bengals are a mess, but not really on offense. So you can't put that on him. So I don't know. He's just another one that doesn't really excite me. I could see it happening though because of that connection with Andrew Barry, but I don't think it will.
Yeah, fair enough. Let's move on now to Todd Munkin. This is an interesting name for a couple reasons. First of all, he's been around forever, both in college and the NFL, for the Browns at one point. He has a lot of experience. Um, I know it says 11 years, but he has a lot of college experience as well. But he's also the reason John Harbaugh was fired, as far as reports seem to be concerned. They wanted to move on from Todd Munkin as offensive coordinator, and John Harbaugh stood up for him as his guy. It's interesting. I wonder if the two are a bit of a package. I don't think that's necessarily the case, but you could read into it a little bit. What's your take on Munkin, though?
I don't actually mind Muggen. He has a lot of experience, right? That's the main thing here. It is to note he was the OC when it was Freddie Kitchens' year here in Cleveland, so that was a very bad year. But he was brought in that year to kind of be the veteran voice to help Freddie guide himself, and obviously that didn't work out. But that was the idea of bringing him in. I actually do like Todd a fair bit amount. I more so like to subscribe to the conspiracy theory that Andrew Barry requested this interview to shake the Ravens organization up to get Harbaugh fired because he knew that Harbaugh was going to stand up for Munkin. So to me, I think he could be a potentially strong hire. It's surprising to me he hasn't gotten a fair shake as an NFL head coach yet with the amount of experience time he's had. He's coached as a head coach in college. He's a two-time college football playoff national champion with Georgia. He has plenty of experience. He has the prerequisites to back it up. It could be an interesting hire, but I think I reserve the right to not want him because I want the other name from Baltimore about 10 to 20 times more.
Yeah, that makes sense. It should be noted that he does have somewhat head coaching experience at Southern Mississippi. Obviously, not NFL head coach experience. I want to move on though, because the next slide, so to speak, or graphic that we have, these are at least two of my favorites, but we'll start with Nate Schiehlhaas. Again, I have no idea if I pronounced that correctly. There is no pro football reference page for Nate, and that kind of speaks to his lack of experience here.
It does speak to his lack of experience here. This is another one where I think we're reaching out to some Rams personnel because of Sean McVay. But it is to note, Sean McVay's coaching tree has had some success already in the NFL. You're talking about Matt LaFleur, Zach Taylor. Yes, I know he's on the hot seat. It's been rough down there, but he did go to a Super Bowl at one point. Kevin O'Connell, who is thought of highly with the Vikings, Raheem Morris, who was just fired, but that was kind of a surprising fire down in Atlanta. Brandon Staley with the Chargers, Jed Fitt. There's a bunch of names. Liam Cohen is underneath the McVay coaching tree. So it makes sense to reach out for the interview, see what Nate has to say. But this is another name of, I think, doing some due diligence, getting out there, seeing what some people have to say. Maybe walking into someone who surprises you enough that you want to further conversations at the very least. But I don't think of him as a very strong candidate nonetheless.
No, he's not a strong candidate here. Here's the thing. Offensive minded, yes. When he left college, his coach at the time was sad to see him go. He couldn't pass up the NFL opportunity. I think this is probably one of those guys who will have a nice future uh, under him eventually. He's in the right tree, he's on the right path. He is both the offensive assistant as well as the passing game specialist. And I believe he was also quarterbacks coach last year for the Rams, if I'm not mistaken, at least one of them. This is a name, again, keep this in mind in the future. I think anybody coming from the McVay coaching tree, as you're alluding to, is somebody to think about down the road, but just not enough experience for the Cleveland Browns. I want to start with one of my favorites, Mike McDaniel. And you and I differ a little bit here in how we feel about him, but let's start with the conspiracy theory that I have on Mike McDaniel. And by the way, this graphic's a little wrong. His head coaching record is, I think, 32 and 35. It is not
35,
60,
32. Yeah.
35 and 32. It is not 68 and 35, which would be a pretty good record. Um, Here's my conspiracy theory, Noah. From reports that I've heard, Mike McDaniel was very taken aback at his firing, to the point where he had had conversations with ownership that he would be a part of their search for a new GM down there in Miami, and yet he was let go. My theory is he was let go because John Harbaugh was fired and ownership wants John Harbaugh. Could be weird there, but he was a later firing, if you'll recall. It was not
Yeah.
immediate.
Yeah, I don't think that's a far stretch by any means because I remember reading reports that McDaniel was safe. He was going to be a part of the head coach or the GM hiring and all of that. So corroborating what you're saying, Mike McDaniel's a character. He's going to rub people the wrong way a little bit wherever he goes. I have no problem with him. I think he's a great offensive mind. I think there's plenty of things to like about him and what he did in his time down in Miami with a guy like Tua of all players. But what
Mhm.
scares me a little bit, and maybe this is wrong, but he is in the same vein of offensive coordinator, offensive mind, where he likes his quarterbacks to play in time. And I feel like he's a little bit stuck in the you have to play in time, very much like Kevin Stefanski was, like, does not like improvisation. Whereas that isn't the modern NFL quarterback game anymore. So it scares me a little bit with him, despite, some of the success that we've seen him have with lackluster quarterback play or whatnot. So to me, he's not my favorite choice by any means. I think there's a chance that he ends up being our head coach, especially because it was rumored before the NFL season was even over for the Browns that they'd be interested in Mike McDaniel. He's actually interviewing today at time of posting this. He should be interviewing in, say, about 4 hours from the minute this video goes out. So if you're watching this as soon as it drops, he's getting interviewed very, very soon. But he's not my favorite. Yeah, I'll be honest. He's not my favorite just because he kind of gives me some of the offensive mind and comparison to one Kevin Stefanski.
Yeah, I mean that's a fair take. He was wide receivers coach for Cleveland, by the way, in 2014, in which no receiver eclipsed 1,000 yards. But they did have Brian Hoyer throwing to them, so maybe that did not help.
And then Johnny Manziel, more so, and then Johnny Manziel.
Andrew Hawkins was the leading receiver that year, by the way. Josh Gordon was still playing, although he only appeared in, I think it was 5 games that year, for
Yes.
obvious reasons. I like Mike because I think he has an incredible offensive mind, more so than Kevin Stefanski, in my opinion. I think, yes, he's a very interesting hire. But is there any question that he's the guy in charge? He benched Tua. He's not afraid to make moves. I don't know. I like this as a potential more so than anybody else we've talked about, other than who we're about to talk about. That's where I'm at
That's
with it.
fair.
That's not
No,
saying I
that's
want.
fair.
He's not my number one choice by any means, but anybody else we just mentioned that we're interviewing, I put Mike McDaniel ahead of every single one of them.
Yeah, I'm with you on that 100%. I'd maybe tie him a little bit with Schwartz, I guess. I'd put him ahead of him more so just because of my reasoning for not wanting Schwartz as head coach. It is to note, though, that the Dolphins were the other team majorly interested in one Dylan Gabriel. So if that name sours your mouth, it puts a bad taste in your mouth. Maybe Mike McDaniel isn't the guy for you because it seemed like he had relative interest for all the same reasons that Kevin Stefanski did in Dylan Gabriel, and that he plays in time, he can read a field the way he does, and whatnot. Did that translate in his 6 games? No, we didn't see it very well in the NFL, but that is something to note if Mike McDaniel does come here to Cleveland.
Is it? I mean, listen, we've given Kevin a lot of crap for that pick, I'll admit. I think it's more where we took him. But if every single draftee was going to turn into a wonderful player, we'd be having a much different conversation. So, I mean, it's a gamble no matter who you take. I think it was more notable for us taking two and where we took them, etc. That said, my favorite part of Mike McDaniel, he went to Miami looking like some nerdy intern, and he's leaving Miami looking like he runs a drug kingdom. He upped his style a little bit.
Yeah, he's got the capris, he's got the sunglasses. Listen, there are some Browns fans that are not going to like this guy if he gets hired, just based off of the personality. I think it'll be more fun because at least he talks in the media a little bit, so I'll be excited to see what he says. He's not my least favorite, he's not my most favorite. Let's get into both of our most favorites right now.
Yeah, that is one, John Harbaugh. I've talked to a lot of people, and we're gonna have a show soon that is with some Ravens fans that some media influencers that do a show on the Ravens. They didn't like him. They were ready to move on from him. I think that's completely asinine. They point to having one Super Bowl win in 18 years. If we had one in the next 18 years, I'd be ecstatic for the record. But I think you need to look a little beyond that. First of all, he's 293 and 180. Is that right, Noah?
I don't know. I will fact check you real quick. Keep going with your
Okay.
take.
Now I'm just questioning myself. Obviously, he has plenty of experience, but he is that leader that we're looking for in particular. He works well with his coordinators. His coordinators stick with him. Todd Munkin is a perfect example. He can obviously lead talent, even though it ended in a rift, and that is a little bit of a question mark. But keep in mind, he's gone to several AFC championships. He's won that Super Bowl. His team missed the playoffs like twice, basically. How could you not like this as a hire? That's what confuses me.
Yeah, no, I'm with you 100%. I think most of Brown's Twitter, most of Brown's fandom, most of Brown's social media is all in on the John Harbaugh train. That's why we're watching airplanes and we're talking about some of the stuff that we're hearing behind the scenes. It is to note, Eric, by the way, his
Yep.
regular season record is 180 and 113. His career record is 193 and 124. So I would check your sources next time
Nope,
here, buddy.
I was in the wrong columns. He coached, 293 total games. That's where that number came from. They're little it's long. He has a lot of history. They're little
That's fair.
numbers.
No, that's fair. That's fair. That's fair. Let's get back to him though. Yes, he would be the home run hit. He would be the guy that everybody would be happy about here in Cleveland just because of his head coaching experience, just because of the name brand, just because of all the things that surround one John Harbaugh. He is the home run hit. And it is to note there was some rumors about some, prerequisites for if he would even want to take a job about salary and coaching staff money and control of the roster. And it came out that all of that was false. And there was a certain media pundit here in Cleveland that was actually spinning that. So that was really interesting. That got shut down on Sunday afternoon. And it is to know it's come out through Mary Kay, it's come out through a lot of different sources that there is a lot of interest in the Browns job for John Harbaugh. He was a childhood Browns fan. His family's from here. He went to Miami of Ohio. He's from the area. So it would be interesting to see if maybe he wants to go retread and also stick it to the Ravens twice a year, coming to an inner division rival that he grew up loving and barking in the dog pound with.
Yeah, everyone keeps saying, "Why would you choose if you're a head coach, why would you choose the Cleveland Browns?" We have a young core. We have a lot of picks in the draft coming up in general, and we have we're like a few pieces away. We have an excellent defense. We're a few pieces away of being at the very least a playoff team. I believe that this team could be a playoff team with Shador Sanders under center. Not a Super Bowl team. I'm not going that far. I'm not saying we have our quarterback yet, but I think they could be. They're pieces away from being a playoff team. I know that probably sounds crazy with just 5 wins, but look at teams like the Patriots that completely flipped their record from the year before to the next year. I think it's doable for us. So that's why you should want to come to Cleveland.
It is doable indeed. And you think about a candidate like Harbaugh, or you think about any of these higher name candidates, any of these candidates, really. Another really intriguing part of this Cleveland Browns job. And maybe I'm sitting here as someone who sits down and talks about the Browns and Cleveland sports 5 days a week and trying to sell it a little bit. But for better or for worse, we have an owner that is willing to spend money. So if there is a guy out there that you really want in terms of a player, in terms of a talent, he will be there, checkbook in hand, ready to bring him in. So that is something that you don't have to deal with when you think of some of these other teams or some other teams, other franchises in the I almost said the NBA, the NFL that won't spend as much money as Cleveland. You even think about a team like the Raiders. They have the number 1 overall pick right now. Their owners don't spend like us despite the fancy new stadium they have.
Yeah, and I'll say this too. There has been an albatross around the neck of the Cleveland Browns by the name of Deshaun Watson. That ends real soon. That saga ends.
1
That
year.
money comes. I mean, that is a really important piece. So you come in, you start building culture, you start putting the pieces in place, and now all of a sudden you have more cap and room to maneuver and sign some of those guys. Again, quarterback's a big piece. We know that. But I gotta be honest with you, I think the Cleveland Browns coaching job is one of the best available right now in the NFL.
I think it gets crapped on a little too much just because of the history of the orange and brown, right? The recent history, the since 1999 history. I think of it as a pretty good coaching job as well. You have less to deal with, you have more money to be able to manipulate because you have an owner that'll do so. You have some exciting young prospects. You have the best rookie class in my opinion out of any of the 32 teams from 2025. So there's so much to like here. There's so much to take in here. And these candidates would all be very happy, I think, taking a job with one of the 32. But I think the Browns job for sure has a lot more positives than, maybe the national and even local media give them credit for.
Yeah, I keep hearing the same thing over and over. Why wouldn't a guy like John Harbaugh go to the Giants that has a better young core? I just want to remind everybody the Giants won 4 games this year. They did not win 5, and I'm not saying that's something to really note on or be notable. But for a team that and our quarterback didn't even start most of the game, so maybe not.
And you got to remember too, we have the best player in the NFL that doesn't play the quarterback position. Very easily the best player in the NFL that isn't a quarterback, in my opinion, in one Miles Garrett. To anchor a defense, you're going to have a top five defense no matter what with that core they have over there. So I think that's another selling point as well. I
I
just think
Maybe I have recency bias in my head. I think Miles is top 5 in the NFL. But after watching Christian McCaffrey today, or yesterday rather, I don't know, man.
I can't. Okay, it's hard to compare offensive and
It is
defensive
hard.
players, and we don't need to go down this route. So we're in lockstep, I think, in terms of Harbaugh. You're more high on McDaniel. I'm kind of higher, I think, than you. In Schwartz, the rest of the names that they've interviewed thus far are kind of eh. I doubt it, but if something happens, that'll be crazy. I think that's the best way to wrap this one up, right?
Yeah, and to preview tomorrow a little bit, this is where we get a lot wackier. These are the names that I would expect, at least some of them, that could be hired by the Cleveland Browns. Well, we're going to go through some names that there's a couple that I still like, but there's a lot that we're not even going to spend much time on, just to be honest. And I'm not even sure I'm going to make a fancy graphic for some of those names. That said, it will still be fun and, as always, we're gonna have a good time doing it.
And if you want to hear us talk and break down a little bit more of Harbaugh, we had an episode come out. It'll be linked here at the end of the video. As soon as Harbaugh got fired from the Ravens, we came on and basically said it's time to hire Harbaugh right now. Jimmy, back up the Brinks truck. So make sure you go check that video out as well if you haven't already. It breaks down even in more detail what we think of Harbaugh and why we think he'd be a good fit here in Cleveland than this video already did in the small segment that we gave to him.
Yeah, definitely check that out. The debate never ends, but the show does for now. We'll see you next time.